I'll be leaving and come back again.
Everyone, please take their seats. Good afternoon. Today is Tuesday, February 27th, 2024. I hereby call local government full committee to order. Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Representatives Alexander, Burkhart, Carr, Doggett, Hale, Helton Haynes, Holsclaw, Love, Martin, McKenzie, Miller, Moon, Raper, Reedy, Shaw, Rudd, Stevens, Slater, Thompson, Warner, Vice Chairman Wright, Chairman Crawford.
Present.
Chairman Crawford, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. At this time, I'm going to make a couple of announcements. If you see any of the individuals on the diocese getting up and walking out or people coming in, that's simply we have bills. Each member has bills in other committees, and we have to take those as we can get over there. So that's the reason. Hope that doesn't disturb the audience, but that's the reason people will be getting up. Today, we have 11 bills on the calendar, and we will take those up. I'm going to take the first bill out of order. So if you would please see item number 7 on today's agenda. It's House Bill 2140 by Representative Butler. We're going to take it out of order, then we'll go back to the regular calendar. Do I have a motion? Proper motion and second on House Bill 2140 by Representative Butler. Chairman Carr, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. I know I'm a little bit out of order, but according to last week in the subcommittee, we didn't get another amendment on this bill. So with the understanding of the sponsor there, I'll make a motion that we roll this to the special calendar.
Do I have a second? Got a proper second. We are now ready to vote on House Bill 2140 being rolled to the special calendar of the final calendar. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Bill will be rolled to the special calendar.
Thank you, Committee Chairman.
Item number 1 on today's agenda is House Bill 2018 by Speaker Marsh. Proper motion and second. Speaker Marsh, you are recognized on
Thank you,
House
Mr.
Bill
Chairman,
2018.
committee. This bill is brought to us by the Tennessee County Trustees Association, and it is fully supported by its legislative committee and members. And what this did is a couple of years ago, we passed legislation to allow the county trustees to use collection agents. And it's been working very, very well. We have over 17 counties that are using it often. And on the bill that we had 2 years ago, we had a sunshine provision on it, which will make it end this June. So what we're doing with this legislation is taking the sunshine off and letting it continue on. It's doing such a good job. With that, I'll answer any questions.
Is there any questions for the sponsor? Representative Warner, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, sponsor. Representative, do you know how much of a percentage that these companies are getting to collect this money?
Chairman Marsh.
Thank you. I think it's right at 25%, what they're telling me.
Representative Todd, follow
I
up.
think it might change a little, up or down, but it's around average 25%.
What about the success rate?
It's been very successful. I've got a list of counties that have collected and how much they've collected. My trustee told me last week that she collected a bill that was 10 years old by using this.
Representative Todd, do you have a follow up?
Good deal. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions for the speaker? Previous question has been called. It's undebatable. All those in favor of moving House Bill 2018 on to, let me make sure I got the right place. We're going to move that to Finance, Ways, and Means. All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Bill moves on to Finance, Ways, and Means. Number 2 on today's agenda is House Bill 474 by Chairman Reagan. Got a proper motion and second. I do see we have an amendment on the bill we need to place. Can you please give us your drafting number, Chairman Reagan?
Yes, sir. My drafting number is 6528.
That is correct. Do I have a motion? Proper motion and second on the amendment. Chairman Reagan, would you like for us to place this amendment on the bill to be discussed?
Yes, please. It does rewrite a major portion of the bill.
We're ready to vote on Amendment 6528 going on to House Bill 474. All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. The bill is now amended. Chairman Reagan, you're recognized on the amended bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Simply stated, this bill prohibits counties, municipalities, or metropolitan governments from expending funds for the purposes of studying or dispersing reparations. It defines what reparations are, as well as defines what they're to be paid for, which means money or benefits provided to individuals or descendants or persons who were enslaved. The fact of the matter is, no one alive today was either a slave or a slaveholder. If there were to be reparations program, the question becomes, from whom are these reparations taken, and to whom are they paid? The architects of our Constitution understood the immense dangers of political retaliation. They designed state and federal constitutions to enshrine a new and better system of justice. Article 3 of the U.S. Constitution and the Tennessee Bill of Rights explicitly prohibit kin punishment. That is to say, it is wrong to punish someone for another person's crimes or wrongdoings. More than that, it's always wrong to punish any person for the crime of another. Slavery was a grievous evil. There is no one that can stand against that. And all of us want to see American communities flourish. But extracting a fine from one group to pay it to another on crimes that neither group was alive to see is a new injustice. And again, from whom do we take the money and to whom do we give it? I urge your vote and passage of House Bill 474.
You've heard description of House Bill 474 as amended. Is there any questions for the sponsor? Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, to the sponsor of the bill. I don't know if I even know where to start. Are you saying that in any case, in any situation, no one should be able to be rewarded for the pain and suffering that they went through as young as slavery is, which still exists today?
Chairman Reagan.
Slavery still exists today. In fact, I've carried a bill to counter it. In fact, presented it on the floor. It's called human trafficking today, which is a euphemism. The slavery we're talking about here was that which was in existence and, in fact, made illegal by the 13th and 14th Amendments.
Representative Shaw.
So I guess this is where kind of my faith come in. I can't, I'm trying to get my arms around exactly. I hear what you said, but what you're trying to do, because I mean, I still think that there could be some people even living today. And actually, you're listening to one talk right now that was involved in the situation. I'm not asking for reparation, but I probably ought to for what happened, but I'm not. But there are other people like me still living, and I don't understand how I could say that, we shouldn't look back and take care of that if that's what needed to be done. And I do think it needs to be something that's validated and need to be true, but I don't know how we look back and do that. So I thank you for the time to comment, Mr. Chairman, but I'm just really baffled. Thank you.
Chairman Reagan for a response.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to help clarify that, anybody who is enslaved today has been enslaved against our law. It's illegal. They are entitled to seek civil and criminal compensation. This bill is not about those who are illegally enslaved. This bill is about those who were enslaved prior to the 13th and 14th Amendment. And there is no one alive, according to the Census Bureau today, who was either a slave or a slaveholder prior to that time.
Representative Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to sponsor. Do you believe that the U.S. economy had any economic gains from the free and forced labor of persons from Africa?
Chairman Reagan,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sir, your question has nothing to do with this bill.
Representative Love for a follow-up.
So what the original question you asked in your presentation was, from who would the reparations be paid? And my course of questions is speaking to that because your bill is preventing local governments from studying reparations. So my line of question goes to the fact that I believe that the Tennessee economy benefited from the forced and free labor of Myra Love, who was my great-grandmother, and Samuel Love, who was my grandfather, who were both enslaved in Tennessee and were not paid. And the census record shows that they were enslaved and not paid. So that's why my question asks, do you believe that the U.S. economy benefited from any way from the free and forced labor of persons from Africa who were brought here in chattel slavery beginning as early as the 1600s? That's why I asked the question.
Chairman Reagan,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Once again, I'll respond with the same response. Your question has nothing to do with this bill, sir.
Representative McKenzie,
Sorry, Mr. Chair, but I wasn't finished, but I know, are we limited to?
you are not, but I didn't see your hand, and I have Representative McKenzie on the list. I can come back to you, but I recognized him.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Put me back on the list, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As we discussed in sub, but let me get to what you were saying earlier. You talked about crimes against people and that no person can be charged with a crime against another person. But as you also laid out, this bill covers slavery, which had to be abolished with an amendment. So slavery wasn't a person-to-person crime. Slavery was a crime by the United States that had to have an amendment to abolish it. So my question to you is, why are you bringing this bill as it relates to, and your justification is this is a person that can't pay it? So why are you bringing this bill when this bill does not deal with a person paying reparations?
Chairman Reagan,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, I'm a bit confused by your analogy. I think the gentleman next to you had mentioned being a victim of slavery, and I pointed out that under our current laws, slavery is illegal, and it is possible to seek criminal and civil restitution for that. As far as a person is concerned, this bill is asking the question, from whom are reparations taken and to whom are they given, since there is no one today alive who was affected by slavery, which, by the way, is an unfortunate circumstance, and it was legal in our nation prior to the 13th and 14th Amendment. But since that time, it has been illegal.
Representative McKenzie,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You made a total, I would say, misstatement. There are people alive today that have been affected by slavery. There are people alive today that's been affected by slavery. But Mr. Chair, I like to go out of session because as I read this caption, I don't think it applies in any way, shape, form, or fashion to the amendment that we just put on the bill. And I'd like to ask legal.
Representative McKenzie, would you agree to allowing Representative Love to ask his question that I missed, and then we will go out of session?
Absolutely.
I'll come back.
Representative Love,
I can come back, Mr. Chairman, after we get out of session.
okay.
If that's fine.
Without objection, we will go out of session. I will recognize legal for Representative McKenzie's question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Josh Houston, Legal Services. So the caption to this bill, House Bill 474, is an act to amend Tennessee Code annotated Title V, Title VI, Title VII, Title IX, and Title 67 relative to local governments. The amendment amends Title V, Title VI, and Title VII, and applies only to local governments. It applies to counties, municipalities, and metropolitan governments. So it'd be my opinion that the amendment is squarely within the caption of the bill.
Representative McKenzie for legal.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. But as I read the caption, it says expresses legislative intent that persons appointed to a charter commission for the consolidation of functions of the county and the creation of a metropolitan government be representative of both incorporated and unincorporated areas of the county. That's what this bill covers. The caption covers the intent of the bill, and anything that's introduced should fall within this caption. So there's, let me ask you again, what specifically about preventing locals from having reparations falls within a person being appointed to a charter commission for consolidation of metro government?
Legal service.
Thank you, Josh Houston for Legal Services. So what you just referred to is the abstract, which is the essentially a summary of the bill as it was introduced, and the abstract is not changed until the bill is finally passed. So once the bill passes, the abstract will be changed to as introduced. It will say as enacted, and will accurately reflect what is in the bill as it was passed. So this was a caption bill, and this amendment is redoing the entire bill.
Any other questions for legal? Seeing none, we'll go back in session. Representative Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just to the sponsor, I know this is a difficult subject for many of us to discuss, and we try our best to address these issues. I would just appeal to you to just for a moment understand that for many of us, there is this thing called the vestiges of slavery. And that's the residue that's left over. And the vestiges of slavery affect generations and generations when we see instances where the forced and free labor of persons from Africa denied them the chance to benefit from the economic gains that they produced for this country. The Center for Equitable Growth, the Washington Center for Equitable Growth, estimates that the increase in output per enslaved worker was responsible for roughly a fifth of the growth in commodity output per capita for the United States as a whole between 1839 and 1859, between 18.7% and 24.3%. And so the point I was trying to make to you is that the U.S. economy and the economy of many of our states benefited from the forced and free labor of persons from Africa and other places, but mainly from Africa. And to wholesale just deny that there are residual effects, even in 2023, of an institution that was abolished by law, I think is I know, extremely difficult for me. I evoke the name of my ancestors because oftentimes we don't put a face and a name.
Representative Love, I've been really lenient. Can you please get to the question?
Yes, sir. Here's the question. Can you roll the bill for a week?
Chairman Reagan.
I would prefer not to, sir. It's a very straightforward bill.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, sponsor, for your leniency.
Representative Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How, what negative repercussions do you see that would happen against the state of Tennessee by a local government either studying or dispersing reparations in one form or another?
Chairman Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What you're talking about is the equivalent of kin punishment. That is, punishing children for the sins of their parents or relatives for the sins of their relatives, family members. The idea that someone is guilty because a member of their family or some ancestor did something is an anathema to our Constitution. In fact, our U.S. Constitution and our state constitution specifically prohibit something called corruption of blood, which is another way of saying punishing family members for the crimes of another. It is certainly true that kin punishment was practiced historically by traditionally dictatorial governments such as Nazi Germany, China, and Japan, and presently in North Korea. But it is not so in our country.
Representative Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, that's great theory. And we can argue theory all day long. But, you know, the fact is that ancestors of enslaved people are still affected even after well over 150 years of slavery. I mean, I live in a majority African American city that, and I can see that I've seen it for decades. So, in a practical way, if a city or a county sees a positive effect by at least studying, if not reimbursing, reparations, do you not feel that that would be, you know, some justification for allowing that to happen with the city or county?
Chairman Reagan.
No, sir, I don't.
Representative Thompson for
Okay.
follow-up.
I respectfully disagree, and I think for very practical reasons that this will be harmful to cities and counties and generally to the state of Tennessee.
Representative Shaw, I have you on the list, but I'm going to bypass you to Representative Miller since he has not had a chance to speak. Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I don't know where to start. I do know where to start. I'm going to be positive. I have to do that to maintain sanity around here. I see you as a good man.
Thank you.
The time I've known you, a man with experience, even wisdom. When I see you through the meetings, receptions, you got a firm hand grip, and I like that. A man who stands up for what he believes. I even thought, this is a man I can go out and have a beer with on the weekend or something, right? And I try not to take things personal around here. I've been doing it for a long time, a long time. I've been pretty successful, I think. This language, though, and if I can separate the language from the man, not only is it offensive, insulting, divisive, unnecessary, but it's hurtful. It's hurtful. And what hurts me more is that it's coming from someone I respect. We got enough of this going on in the state, in these committees. At some point in time, pull back, take a breather, do it next year. Give me a break. Give us a break from this madness. Give us a break. Back in the day, being here for 30 years, we were men and women of prestige, real purpose, respect. I don't see that up here today. I'm not going to get into some intellectual debate about what my colleagues have already talked about. I'm not going to demean myself with that. I'm not going to do, because they said it to the point that if it doesn't make sense to this committee and you, it's certainly not going to make sense coming from me. Because what you're saying in this bill, I don't even want you to study it. Come on, man. This is America. This is what makes us great. We can study anything we want to. That's freedom to study. And you want to restrict us to even knowing? I'm not going to even ask you to roll the bill because I'm sick and tired of rejections. Do the right thing. Give us all a break. Do something different than what people think you're going to do. Surprise us.
Representative Shaw.
Thank you,
May
Mr.
I respond
Chairman.
to that, Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry, Chairman.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I regret that my colleague has expressed that because I do respect him and I don't take things personally either. That said, this bill is not intended personally, and as far as studying is concerned, the entities concerned here are governments. If they wish to contract with one of our universities for a study, they're certainly free to do that. The government entity itself is what this is about. And as far as delaying it is concerned, there's no real reason to delay because it's not going to change the principles in this bill. The principles in this bill are straightforward. It's about a principle of law that has been around since well before the Magna Carta. We don't punish family members for the sins of their ancestors or other family members. And that's what this is in effect doing.
Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I won't belong to time. I just basically want to say this for the record. I've been around here for a long time, and one of the things that I've always tried to do was to respect my colleagues. Doesn't matter who they are. I think it's important that we respect and care for each other. And I want to go to heaven, so I have to love everybody. In fact, I have to love folk that won't love me back. But there's one thing I found out: you can't cover your sins with legislation. You can put it all up all you want to, but at the end of the day, God has the last say. And of course, I can't support this. I won't support this. That will support it is that God has the last say. And when we try to cover our steps with legislation, we're making a big mistake. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Next on the list is Representative Warner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move previous question.
Roll call vote, please.
Give me just a second. Representative Warner, you called for the question, is that correct? Okay.
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay. That is a non-debatable. That is non-debatable, and I did not recognize the individual who called for out of turn, was not recognized to call for the roll call vote, so we will
Point of
be
order.
voting.
Could I have point of order?
Representative McKenzie, for what purpose?
As I read the rules for this committee, it simply said, did not give any modicums or any kind of clarifications, but it said that any three members or the chair may call for a roll call vote at any time
When they're recognized.
prior
but
to the vote. It did not say when recognized. It said prior to the vote.
You can't just holler out from your seat, sir. You have to be recognized by the chair. That being said, we have already taken a vote on the amendment, so there has been a vote taken, so we will not be doing a roll call vote. All those in favor of House Bill 474 as amended, moving on to calendar and rules, please say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. If you'd like to be recorded as a no, please see the clerk. Next on the
you, Mr.
agenda is
Chairman.
item number 3, House Bill 594 by Representative Garrett. Ma'am, if you do not be quiet, I'll have you removed from the courtroom. Thank you. Representative Garrett, we got a proper motion and second. I do see it has an amendment. Please give us your drafting code.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got amendment 13914.
That is correct. Do I have a motion, proper motion and second on the amendment? Would you like for us to place the amendment on the bill to be discussed?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, as the amendment makes the bill.
All those in favor of amendment number 1394 going on to the bill, please say aye. Opposed, no. Bill is now amended. Chairman Garrett, you are recognized on House Bill 594 as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me give the committee a little bit of kind of background of where this bill has been. We passed this bill last session. It got to calendar and rules, and it was in calendar and rules as the Senate version of this bill was quite different. We have reached an agreement with the Senate's version of the bill, so an amendment on the floor I did not think would be appropriate since it had significant differences between what the bill was in its current posture versus what your amendment does now. So that's where we are. It has already passed the Senate by about, I believe, 27-0. And so we are making it as close as possible to the Senate version. What this did before it came from calendar and rules is it removed in the Nashville area from the entertainment district the authority of the billboard and moved it under the ABC. That is no longer the posture of this bill. What this bill does now is that if there is some sort of violation, and let's say the health code comes out and there's a violation for the code, the violation as it relates to the health-related code cannot also be a violation by the beer board. The beer board needs to have a proper violation reported, and then they need to be proper in investigating that violation. So the beer board can then make a determination if there's some beer board violation. So that's what this does. During COVID, there were some issues during the lockdowns that the health department in Nashville would find whatever violation potentially they may have regarding COVID, but also there would be a beer violation that was not under the health code's particular purview, and they would get violated under the beer board without an investigation by the beer board. So that's what this does. It just separates that if there's a beer board violation, you get due process for what violation you have under the beer board. And of course, if it's a health code violation, you get due process by the health code. You can't do something that's outside your particular realm. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be glad to take any questions.
You've heard the explanation of the sponsor on the bill. I do have a list accumulating. I will recognize Chairman Moon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, sponsor. Simply put, beer boards need to stay in their lane. Is that accurate?
Representative Garrett, you're recognized.
Exactly, Chairman Moon. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Representative Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just for clarity, so does this prevent the health department from issuing citations if they see a violation in the establishment?
Representative Garrett.
As it relates to a health code violation, it would absolutely not prevent. They would be able to have their purview if there's a health code violation and write up that particular violation.
Okay.
Representative Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And you said it's already passed the Senate and we're just getting our language together with them.
Representative Garrett.
That's exactly right, Representative Love.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, sponsor.
Any other questions for the sponsor? Seeing none, we're ready to vote on House Bill 594 as amended. Moving on to calendar and rules. All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Bill moves on to calendar and rules.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee.
Next on today's agenda is House Bill 2967 by Representative Chairman Terry, I see. Got a proper motion and second for the committee to know that I have received a 2/3 majority resolution. It's in my office. If you would like to see it, Chairman Terry, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chairman and committee. This is a local bill. It's to change the private act for Rutherford County to bring it in line with TCA 12-3-1212 for the $50,000 bid threshold for centralized purchasing authority.
You've heard the explanation from the sponsor. Are there any questions? Chairman Moon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move previous question.
Previous question's been called. That's non-debatable. All those in favor of moving House Bill 2967 on to calendar and rules, please say aye. Opposed, no. Bill moves on to calendar and rules.
Thank you, Chairman and committee.
Next on today's agenda is House Bill 1931 by Representative Gillespie. We got a proper motion and second. Representative Gillespie, I do see we have some speakers, but you are recognized on House Bill 1931.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman and committee. This bill is pretty straightforward. What it does is it will prohibit local governments from restricting a police department's ability to perform effective and lawful policing procedures such as routine traffic stops. I think everyone in the room would agree that there are certain actions that drivers can take on the road that can both endanger themselves and others, and that is what this is simply trying to address. With that, I renew my motion.
You've heard the explanation of the sponsor. We have questions. Would the committee like to hear from the speakers before questions, or would you like to take this questions now? Without objection, we'll go out of session and we'll hear from our speakers. Amber, Joshua, David, Macy, if y'all would please come up to the table where a mic is, and we're going to give you, each one of you, 3 minutes. Just turn your red light on and give us your name and who you're with, and we will we'll hear from you guys. And doesn't matter who starts or who finishes. So.
Hello, my name is Macy Flew Hardy. I'm a Davidson County resident. This bill protects the ability of a law enforcement agency to take all necessary steps that are lawful in order to prevent and detect crime and apprehend criminal offenders. I would like to know what this legislation refers to when it says all necessary steps that are lawful under state and federal law, and who chooses what steps are necessary, as this bill does not specify. To leave a decision like that on an officer in the field is irresponsible and dangerous. This needs to be addressed and amended before passing this bill. Death at the hands of an officer is rarely warranted, yet still unjustly performed. The language in this bill could exacerbate our already dire police violence epidemic. Black Americans are 3 times more likely to be killed by a police officer. An overwhelming amount of immigrants face discrimination from police. People experiencing homelessness are disproportionately likely to be subject to use of force by police. Neurodivergent people can also be in danger, as has been reported. Police react to the behaviors of neurodiverse or autistic people as suspicious, belligerent, or dangerous. The individual's natural behaviors, traits, and characteristics often lead to those persons being arrested and physically or emotionally traumatized. These are the people that this bill can harm. During high-stress situations, our brains send out a signal to our body to release adrenaline, fats, and glucose to give us energy. Our decision-making abilities are affected while we are simultaneously pushed into fight or flight mode. A Harvard article tells us all of these changes happen so quickly that we aren't aware of them. The wiring in our brain is so efficient that our visual centers haven't had a chance to fully process what is happening. This is why there is footage of an officer unloading a clip at a car containing a citizen because of an acorn falling. This is why we see people run from police to avoid such shots being thrown at them. Nowadays, even a routine traffic stop can trigger this stress response process. We need more clear guidelines about what steps are necessary because this is not a decision that should be made on duty under stress. A local government should have the freedom to correct themselves. This legislation is government overreach. Our designated departments know what type of policing is needed in their area. If that includes avoiding minor traffic stops, that city should be able to decide how to proceed with such a change. Those traffic stops have not only cost cities time and money, but they have taken countless lives under the guise of all necessary steps. This bill can be dangerous. It can be used as a license to kill if we are not careful. Please consider the unintentional consequences of passing this bill as is. If you will not vote no, please amend this bill to protect your constituents. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Amber Sherman. I'm an organizer with Black Voters Matter, and I also led a large part of the organizing communities did to pass the ordinances in Memphis around police reform. It was important to me to testify today after watching testimony of Representative Gillespie and also Senator Taylor being dishonest about the ordinances that we passed. These ordinances were a community-centered effort, and Memphians specifically proposed the driving equality ordinance because pretextual traffic stops were occurring at very high and disproportionate rates for Black drivers. Our ordinance focused solely on pretextual traffic stops, not routine traffic stops. There is no law or ordinance currently prohibiting police from stopping someone for speeding, reckless driving, or not wearing a seatbelt, as Representative Gillespie has previously said. Therefore, the argument presented by the bill sponsor is unfounded and reason enough for you to vote no on HB 1931. I also have a statement here from Tyre Nichols' family about how this bill impacts the ordinances we specifically passed in response to Tyre being murdered and wanting to prevent this from occurring again. Also, most of the state representatives on this committee sponsored a resolution to honor Tyre Nichols' life. If you truly want to honor his memory, I'm asking that you oppose this bill today. The sponsors have also said that this is about traffic stops. We pulled 6 years of MPD data directly from the traffic court that indicates there is no relationship between the number of traffic stops and the crime data. In fact, MPD made more traffic stops just last year and the crime rate went up. The bill sponsor has championed a surge of Tennessee Highway Patrol officers in Memphis last year and released data about 2 operations where they made 11,626 traffic stops. Only 13 out of almost 12,000 stops resulted in a felony arrest. That is 0.1%. Only 3 stolen vehicles were recovered. That is 0.02%. And the majority of the stops resulted in warnings. This bill is much broader than traffic stops. When Senator Taylor talked about handcuffs on people, this bill specifically puts handcuffs on police chiefs and sheriffs. Last year, Chief Davis advocated to stop high-speed police chase because it put the officers at risk of being killed. This practice should stop, but this bill wouldn't allow them to do that because it can be perceived as something to prevent crime and would not allow her to make any policy changes and not allow any municipality to make any policy changes or any sheriff or police chief. Senator Brent Taylor has talked about how he wants to make Memphis matter. To truly make Memphis matter, we have to listen to Memphians when they champion reforms to prevent hurt and harm against us. The ordinances that we passed were in direct response to folks being pulled over who were Black at extreme rates and putting their lives in danger. If we want to make Memphis matter, we have to uphold reforms that hold police accountable through data transparency, which is one of the ordinances that will be nullified if we pass this bill. I've heard the committee members talk always about having data and how important it is. Okay. Yeah, y'all talk about how important data is, and this is going to nullify that. So I want y'all to please vote no. And Mayor Young also sent y'all a letter today asking that you vote in opposition as well.
Give a quick history. Somewhere in the early 1900s, I'm given a history of how we got to the traffic Joshua Adams. I work for Memphis for All. Somewhere in the 1930s, land was stolen from people in Memphis through eminent domain, and people were shuffled into housing projects. Those housing projects were later after criminalized during the war on drugs, which was kicked off in 1980. Most local police departments were not willing to accept the funding for the war on drugs until people attached a racial face to the war on drugs. And then money flowed like waters. Mainly a 1984 operation through the DEA called Operation Pipeline gave people what are called drug courier profiles, which focused deterrence and policing on Black and brown males. What strikes me as odd is that this bill is said to target traffic stops. I find that impossible by state law because Title 55, Chapter 8, Section 102 says that the rules of the road refer exclusively to highways. Title 4, Chapter 7, Section 104 puts the duty to patrol the highways and to enforce the state traffic codes exclusively on Tennessee Highway Patrol. Title 55, Chapter 10, Section 307 says the municipalities may, by ordinance, adopt the state traffic codes. So this bill may apply to everything except traffic. My main problem is that in my community, I have been targeted by police so often that this is what I experience when I'm pulled over. The shaking, the anger. An officer pulled me over and got my license and registration and tiptoed backwards to his car. An officer pulled me over. I didn't know what I was being pulled over for. He asked for a K-9 unit. Not until after he couldn't get a K-9 unit did he tell me he pulled me over because I had a tinted license plate cover. And we sit up here afraid of data and afraid of history. It is absolute insanity that I'm witnessing up here. In my community, we canvass to figure out what we want for safety. Not what people say we're gonna have for safety, but what we want. Had 60 conversations. 5 people said that they wanted increased enforcement, but not for traffic, for people breaking in cars. But that's only 10%. 60% of people said they want investments in resolution and mediation. They want investments in their community centers. They want investments in housing. They want investments in mental health. They do not want more people pulling them over for things as simple as a cracked windshield, which the first person I talked to in my community, the very first individual, was a man who was older than 70 years old, who was working because he was experiencing grief because his wife passed. He could not stay at the house, so he started working for the Postal Service and got pulled over by the Scorpion unit because he had a broke windshield. They pulled him out of his car, searched him, and told him to put all the stuff back in his car and left him out there in the middle of the night at a Wendy's on 3rd Street in Rains. This is absolute insanity.
Thank you, sir. Your
Thank
3
you.
minutes have elapsed. We have one more testimony.
Thank you. Is this? Thank you. My name is David Moss, speaking on behalf of the Legal Defense Fund, the nation's first and foremost civil rights legal organization. We strongly urge this committee to reject HB 1931. This bill prevents Tennessee residents, through their local officials, from regulating local law enforcement, whose officers have the power to detain, arrest, use force, and take life. Local police practices are known and felt most by the people who are policed. And this bill would undermine their ability to keep their communities safe by limiting the authority of their local officials to make decisions about policies and practices that directly impact them. And it undermines the checks and balances that local legislatures should provide over local agencies in a well-functioning democracy. A year ago, officers of the Memphis Police Department pulled over Tyree Nichols, allegedly for a traffic violation. They pulled him out of his car, they pepper sprayed him, they tased him, and they beat him so viciously that he died from his injuries. The people of Memphis then banded together and through their local officials passed a common sense bill aiming to prevent tragedies like this from happening again. The bill simply creates a category of 8 low-level traffic violations that shall not be the basis for a traffic stop conducted by police. It's an evidence-based approach that respects the need for traffic safety while also respecting the lives and dignity of Black motorists who are disproportionately stopped, harmed, beaten, and killed during traffic stops. Memphis is not alone. 5 years ago, Nashville invited in researchers who worked with police and analyzed data. They found that Black drivers were disparately stopped, but they also found that traffic stops are not an effective strategy for reducing crime, as my co-panelist pointed out. These researchers found that the police department's practice of making large numbers of stops in high crime neighborhoods did not appear to have any effect on crime. Since then, the MNPD cut its traffic stops by 90%, and crime rates across virtually all indicators remained flat or even declined. We're talking about improvements to public safety being advanced locally by people who care deeply about their own safety, often in collaboration with police. And importantly, it's their tax dollars that provide much of the funding for local PDs. The breadth of this bill is also alarming. It's far broader, I believe, than the sponsor represented. For years, jurisdictions across Tennessee have been advancing new public safety solutions that limit or redefine the roles of police in certain situations. Not only Memphis, but Nashville, Chattanooga, Knoxville, Murfreesboro as well. They're implementing changes that recognize that not every situation requires a police response. Some are better served by a clinician or a paramedic. But in the language of this bill, changes like that could be interpreted as limitations and banned, even though they're evidence-based reforms, and sometimes they're even supported by police. When Phil Keith was head of the Tennessee Association of Chiefs of Police, he decried the fact that police are the ones who are called upon to address every social problem, and that jails end up being our largest mental health providers. He welcomed reforms that actually limit police interactions in certain circumstances. Local residents best understand their own public safety needs. They are the ones impacted by the conduct of their local police, and they have a right to legislate and govern those agencies.
Can you please wrap up?
Thank you. Sure. It would be a devastating mistake for the General Assembly to circumvent the will of local residents and strip them of the right to manage their local affairs. So for those reasons, we call upon you to reject HB 1931. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for the speakers? Representative McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question for you. I'm sorry I didn't get your name, but on last week in subcommittee, I'd asked a question that the sponsor didn't answer. I think I heard it during your testimony. And my question was, as a result of this ordinance, as a result of the ordinance that Memphis passed, did it take down the number or reduce to zero the number of traffic stops for broken lights, expired tags, and things of that nature? And I think I heard you say, could you, so I'll ask you the question because it sounds like you're well informed. As a result of this ordinance, did it take down to zero or any number approaching zero the number of traffic stops that the police department did for those minor offenses?
No, actually, like I talked about in my testimony, the number for pretextual traffic stops, not routine traffic stops. Our ordinance only addressed 5 particular pretextual traffic stops, and those numbers actually surged. So they did not stop doing them.
Representative McKenzie.
Just to be clear, I would like for you, and I ask for you to, could you define pretextual for us?
Yeah, so a pretextual traffic stop is a type of non-safety related violation. So not someone speeding or reckless driving, but a financial requirement like having your brake light fixed or getting your tag placed in the proper place or having your registration not be expired. Those are financial requirements. It's any of those type of stops. So we listed the 5 most common pretextual stops, and police officers have often used pretextual stops as a basis to stop someone and then brutalize that person, or in Tyree Nichols' case, kill him. And so we want to prevent those most common stops, because these are the 5 most common ones, because they don't actually keep us safer. And so we are not stopping folks from stopping someone for speeding or not wearing a seatbelt. Those are safety concerns. Those are not prohibited by this ordinance.
Representative Shaw for the speakers. Okay, we'll get you. You have personal order. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'd like for you and the committee to help me make welcome my mayor, Bolivar, who's here with his wife and his assistant and chamber director. They all here. I'd ask them to stand, and if y'all would help me make them welcome today.
Thank you all for being with us today. Representative Miller for the speakers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this question is for each of you because you all mentioned that in your interpretation as you analyze the bill, it is broader than traffic stops. Briefly, could you really tell us why?
So the bill cannot possibly apply to traffic stops. So traffic stops, any municipality has the right or the discretion under the rules of road, Title 55, Chapter 10, Section 307. Any municipality may adopt state ordinances or may adopt their own ordinances based on the state traffic ordinances. Tennessee Highway Patrol, however, is the local enforcement, and the rules of the road under the state codes only apply to highways. So the bill cannot even possibly apply to traffic stops. And again, if it did, it would be very specific and say that, because so it would be applied to anything that's related or relevant to law enforcement.
If I may just add a point, when we look at the language of this bill, you'll see that it applies to any local government official, which could be a city council, but it could also be the chief of police, it could be the mayor, it could be a county judge, for all we know, based on the language of this law. And it applies to any policy, which isn't just a city council ordinance, but it's also the departmental policy of the police department or the mayor, implementing in a policy from his sort of executive capacity. So in those ways, this really is about everything that a city is doing. So for instance, when Nashville Police Department decides just on its own accord that it wants to cut down its police stops, and the police chief, let's say, makes a directive to their officers that they should not be stopping people for X, Y, or Z traffic violation, that would, as far as I can tell from the language of this bill, violate this law, even though it's coming from the police department itself.
I just wanted to add that our police chief and other police chiefs throughout the state of Tennessee have made policy changes to make the police department better, to hold officers accountable, and even to abide by different state laws that have passed. They've wanted to put those things in their local codes. And this law, as it's written out, is extremely broad, so it could include anything. It is not solely focused on traffic stops. And I agree with the other person who testified that said that we really do need to add an amendment, but specifically not pass this legislation because it is so broad. It could apply to anyone, including a mayor who is a government official, or our city council. And I think that that's very dangerous to do, to create that kind of local overreach on any municipality.
Representative Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's the question I was going to ask you because a few years back, I do know that our previous chief in Nashville did enact a policy to focus less on the routine traffic stops that you spoke about and focus more on those that they thought would indicate that there was something else going on there. And we saw a decrease in the traffic stops and an increase, I think, in the more violent crimes. And so what you're telling me is that if this bill passes, then my chief, Chief Drake in Nashville, cannot do that, correct?
As far as I can tell from the language of the law, this is correct. I don't see, looking at this bill, why you would not be correct about that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The last person I have on the list is Chairman Doggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to our guests, thank you for being here. I noticed that the conversation continues to revolve around traffic stops, and I think two of our speakers, one gentleman said there was 8 things that there was a focus around not stopping vehicles on. Could you expand on what those 8 things?
There are only 5.
It was reduced to 5.
I apologize that I misstated the number, and it's 5. I know that they're non-moving violations, correct?
Yeah, so it's loose bumpers, one of your rear lights out, a loose tag, which means that the tag is not like affixed horizontally, the location of your tag and your late registration. So those are the only 5.
Represent Chairman Doggett.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'll have a few questions if you'll allow me to roll, if it's okay or no.
Yes, that's
All
fine.
right. Thank you. What would applicably statewide, what would be some reasons why we would not want, maybe a municipality or a county would not want their law enforcement officers to use these infractions if they're non-moving infractions? Why would they not want to be able to utilize those tools to investigate crimes?
So those are not criminal investigative tools. Those tools are specifically related to the stop for which the officer is pulling them over. Now, if the officer has a hunch that somebody has something, then he has to base that on some other sort of probable cause. But the reason why we might not want that to happen is because what ends up happening is people get caught up in the cycle of paying off fines and fees that they end up never being able to pay off. We had people who were pulled many times when we went to city council. We presented individuals who had been pulled over successively over and over and over again. Once they get their license reinstated, they get pulled over again because their insurance is lapsed and their licenses back out. The other reason is that it increases the likeliness that people will suffer violence during a traffic stop, and it increases poverty on the local level. And the price point for doing so is way too high. I mean, even like Brent Taylor's Operation Grizzly, it may not be Brent Taylor's Operation Grizzly, but they did about 12,000 stops and only found 3 stolen cars. Most of it ended up in warnings.
Chairman Doggett.
I'm sorry, if I could just add a point to the previous question that was just asked. And I would just say that there is a dearth of research, including from Nashville itself, just to demonstrate that traffic stops just simply are not an effective way to promote traffic safety when you're looking at these types of non-moving violation traffic stops, and also research that very strongly suggests that it really does not have an impact on crime. And I would be very happy to share some of that research with your office after the fact if you're interested.
Chairman Doggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple years ago, Public Chapter 1015, we, excuse me, we passed, that was one of my bills that dealt with, if you had been convicted of human trafficking, there was a special identifier that went on your driver's license. And we have several of those identifying numbers on driver's license now that indicate different things, habitual DUI offenders or sex offenders and so forth. And we put, if you had been convicted of human trafficking. And the reason for that is that if a law enforcement officer stopped you for a reason, maybe it was an expired plate, or it was, a tail light that was out or a headlight was out, something that, which according to the TCA is reason to stop someone in a vehicle. Once they make contact with that driver, the occupant of that vehicle, and if they saw that code on there and maybe there were children or some other adults in the vehicle, they could give them reason to investigate further to see if maybe these persons were being trafficked as well. And so that's one of those things. There was a routine traffic, quote unquote, routine traffic stop for a minor infraction in Mississippi, in Oxford, 3 years ago, I believe it was, where a gentleman had come through town and they had stopped him, and come to find out he had some children that were being sex trafficked from another state. And so that led to eventually a conviction in a federal court, but it was that minor traffic violation that led to this. And so that's one of the things that I think about. If cities and counties have ordinances or resolutions that they say, we're not going to do certain things, and enforce certain things, which officers do have discretion. I worked in law enforcement. I didn't stop every car that I saw with an expired plate or a tail light out. It just, it wasn't always in necessary for, I think, public safety. But occasionally you would see some that you thought, hey, that's something right there, you know, use your discretion, you know. There's always other factors that you have to consider. And so I think it's important that officers are able to use the discretion. Also, I know that the conversation has kind of went around traffic stops, but the language of this it is broad, but this language would prevent, let's say, a county who had a high domestic violence rate. It would prevent them from saying, we're no longer going to investigate domestic violence. And so in doing so, that would lower those numbers of those cases because they were not actually doing any investigation or enforcement into that, which would be concerning for all of us. Or even you could step back even further and say thefts or burglaries. And so that's one of my things that I say about it, that it would prevent a local governing entity from saying that we're not going to take vehicle thefts. We're not going to investigate those. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but that's just how I read the language.
Yeah, so I do just want to say we're not asking for our ordinances to be a state law. We're just asking to preserve our local authority. And as Memphians, we came together as a community to propose these ordinances because those 5 specific things were being used to target Black drivers. When they were getting folks for these specific things, they weren't finding criminals and felons. The percentage was extremely low, and people were being harmed. Not only killed, but also having their cars taken from them and impounded, or getting these loads and loads of fees that they were not able to pay off, that they will pay a little bit off here and there. But our traffic division in Memphis is the lowest revenue making department because people are not able to pay the fines off because they're getting them so excessively for things that are not safety issues. And so I think our main point is that we want to keep our local authority in Memphis. And because the language is so broad, it's very dangerous to pass something like this. And we're specifically asking just for the opportunity to, use the police as we see fit. And Mayor Young even said that in his letter that he sent to the committee members, is that he is using a holistic approach to crime. And that includes them having the authority, him as mayor and the police chief, to change policies as they need to. And it's been working. They just did a crackdown a week ago. They talked about, so if you pass this bill, you're going to remove that authority from them. And as we talked about Memphis having a crime problem, they're trying to tackle that problem. And I think this overreach will remove their ability to do that. And I don't want that to happen either because we voted for our mayor overwhelmingly. And so we want him to be able to use his power as mayor as well.
Chairman Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's say that I'm a police officer and I go and I stop somebody that is not on this list of the things you can stop for, and I write them up for, say, a no tag or anything like that. And they say I'm a habitual of that because I just want to do that as my discretion as an officer. Is there a penalty for that officer if he continues to do that?
Could you say the question one more time? I meant the beginning part was a little confusing. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm a police officer, and I know that there may be pulling a person over for a expired tag is not one of the items that you allow to be pulled over for. But if I continue to do that and I write those people for not having an expired tag, for having an expired tag, is there a penalty for that police officer if he does that once or more than one time?
No.
No penalty?
Our ordinance doesn't have a penalty. It just asks that they do not do that.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Shaw for our final question.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Were any of these incidents turning into the chief of police when they happen? I mean, how was they handled? For instance, when someone was violated without a cause, who got that? Did they turn them in? Who got that?
Yeah, so people have reported when someone has pulled someone over in an unmarked car or when someone has still done the pretextual stops. From what we know, there hasn't been any penalties of any kind. But also she has adjusted policies as incidents have occurred. So when Tyree Nichols was murdered, she put in a policy around your cameras to make sure that if someone turned their camera off, that there was some kind of administrative response to that, because a lot of times people would turn their body camera off and there would be no penalty. And then she did see a decrease in that by changing that policy. And so this bill will remove her ability to also do that. And we want to make sure that there is transparency and accountability within police officers. And so if we take that away, that can also hinder, the experience for citizens.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Seeing no other questions for our speakers today, thank you all for being with us. Appreciate you taking your time coming and give us your testimony. Without objection, I'll go back into session. We're back in session, and first on my list is Representative Martin. He's going to roll Representative Warner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I call previous question.
Previous question has been called. That's non-debatable. We have
Roll call vote.
three. Do we have three hands?
We got 3 hands.
We have objection. We will be voting on the objection of the call the question. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no.
No.
Previous question is not accepted. Next on the list is Representative Moon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the sponsor, do you have an approximate number of vehicles registered in Shelby County?
Representative Gillespie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for that question. I do not have the exact number, but the population in Shelby County is roughly 1 million people, and I would base probably roughly half of that, the registered amount of cars.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
do you know the portion of the registration fee that comes to the state of Tennessee from a vehicle registration?
Representative
License plate.
Gillespie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, sir. I believe it's a little over $20.
Representative Moon.
I believe it's $23.75. I think I agree with a lot of what the people who testified said. But that's a significant amount of money that comes to the state of Tennessee to maintain our roads and to support law enforcement. Moreover, the clerk's office keeps the other part of that money and runs the clerk's office. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe that the resolution passed that I read, well, there was a penalty for stopping a car with expired plates. And I will check that, but I believe that was it was a joint resolution. There was one passed by Shelby County Commission, and I believe there was one passed by the Memphis City Council. Either way, it's a significant amount of money that needs to come to our state. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, sponsor.
Representative Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sponsor, can you give some examples of resolutions, ordinances, or policies that prompted this bill?
Representative Gillespie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, there's several, but what it really comes down to is because of the ordinances that have already been discussed in depth that the Memphis City Council have passed, there is a multiple feelings of people not feeling safe. You've heard it from both sides, but that's what it comes down to. And what this ordinance that, in my view, that was passed by the city council that contradicts state law, and the reason it was not implemented until this year is because the city attorney said that to the county or the city council that it did violate state law. So the previous administration did not enforce it. It is now being enforced, and I would argue that road rage is up, reckless driving is up, public safety on the roadways, the feeling of it is down. And just because this ordinance does not specifically speak to that, we are talking about confusing a police officer. Police officers get their powers from state law. They are required by oath to follow state law. Now what we're telling them is, no, you don't have to follow state law, and you could be punished for that. And it's leading to confusion among the rank and file members of the police department in Memphis and other places. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that is my response.
Representative Thompson.
But again, try to get, and trust me, I live in Memphis too, so I definitely want to feel safe. I don't want my family to feel safe. Again, can you give me just one example, a specific example?
Representative Gillespie.
Thank you. So I think the speakers that already spoke said the examples, but what they are, one broken taillight that's out, a late registration, that's someone that has not paid for whatever reason. I believe it's either 60 days or 90 days after the fact. There are, improper usage of your license plate, which again, state law dictates how that should take place. So those are just a few examples.
Representative Thompson for your final question.
Okay, those are examples of what the speakers, I was asking you about what you would say. Now, the fact is that, police, being a police officer is an extremely complicated job. And when you have a police chief or a sheriff, they're the ones responsible for setting policies, for setting a lot of those things in the legislative bodies, for setting ordinances they go by. Now, when we start mixing other entities, in this case, the state, I realize the state has the authority to do this, but is it a wise decision for it to do it? And I think that as long as we have police chiefs who are paid a lot of money to do this job, then they're the ones to set all these things, and adding another entity in there is going to complicate that so much more. We're a diverse state, and what works in Memphis may not work in Bolivar, for instance. But we need to give some leeway for all these areas to operate and to operate their law enforcement agencies on their own.
Representative Martin.
I move the previous question.
Previous question has been called. It's non-debatable. We do have objection. We'll be voting on the objection to the previous question. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Ayes have it. We will be voting.
Roll call vote, please.
So I had to inquire, Mr. Chair.
I made a roll call vote.
I seen two hands.
No, well, I had to inquire. That's what I was asking.
Okay, do we want to do the inquiry or do we want to do the roll call vote first?
My inquiry was pertaining to that.
Okay, go ahead.
So,
Just a minute, you haven't been recognized. Representative Love?
Are we able to request that without being recognized and then raise our hands?
I have to see three hands. If you raise three hands in objection, then we'll be voting on the objection.
No. The question I asked was, are we able to ask for a roll call vote?
Yes. For three. If you have three people that ask for it, three hands, you can have a roll call vote.
Oh, without being recognized?
Yes, if
Okay,
you raise
thank you.
three
Okay,
hands,
that's-
I will recognize the three hands. Representative Warner. But we had a vote on the objection and the objection won. So all they're doing now is asking for a roll call vote. So we're going to take the vote right now, but it will be a roll call vote. Is that cleared up? Yes. Thank you, sir. All right. All right, we're ready to roll call vote on House Bill 1931. Madam Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Representative Alexander. Yes. Alexander votes aye. Representative Burkhart. Burkhart votes aye. Representative Carr. Aye. Carr votes aye. Representative Doggett. Aye. Doggett votes aye. Representative Hale. Aye. Hale votes aye. Representative Hilton Haynes. Aye. Hilton Haynes votes aye. Representative Holsclaw. Holsclaw votes aye. Representative Love. No. Representative Love votes no. Representative Martin.
Aye.
Representative Martin votes aye. Representative McKenzie.
No.
Representative McKenzie votes no. Representative Miller. Miller votes no. Representative Moon. Moon votes aye. Representative Raper. Representative Reedy. Reedy votes aye. Representative Rudd. Rudd votes aye. Representative Shaw. Shaw votes no. Representative Slater. Slater votes aye. Representative Stevens. Stevens votes aye. Representative Thompson. Thompson votes no. Representative Warner. Warner votes aye. Vice Chairman Wright. Vice Chairman Wright votes aye. Chairman Crawford.
Aye.
Chairman Crawford votes aye.
Move for adjournment, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Crawford, we have 16 ayes and 5 noes.
Bill moves on to calendar and rules. All right, guys, we've got about 6 minutes until we have to give the room up.
Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Moon.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we can reconsider action on item 2, House Bill 747.
Do I have a second?
474.
Got a proper second. We are going to reconsider our actions on
Item number 2.
item number 2. And the chairman will take privilege at this time. And it was my interpretation of the way our rules was, but that there had to be a roll call vote had to be asked for before the vote was taken. We took an amendment vote, and but that I've been informed. I have the clerk. They've checked into it. That is not correct. That only applies to the sponsor. So I take all blame for that. But I've asked Chairman Moon to reconsider our actions, and we are back on House Bill 474. And without objection, we will have a roll call vote. Seeing none, we're ready to vote on House Bill 474. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Representative Alexander. Alexander votes aye. Representative Burkhart. Burkhart votes aye. Representative Carr. Carr votes aye. Representative Doggett. Doggett votes aye. Representative Hale. Hale votes aye. Representative Hilton Haynes. Hilton Haynes votes aye. Representative Holsclaw. Holsclaw votes aye. Representative Love.
No.
Representative Love votes no. Representative Martin. Martin votes no, or aye. Representative McKenzie.
No.
McKenzie votes no. Representative Moon. Moon votes aye. Representative Miller. Miller votes no. Representative Raper. Raper votes aye. Representative Reedy. Reedy votes aye. Representative Rudd. Rudd votes aye. Representative Shaw.
No.
Shaw votes no. Representative Slater. Slater votes aye. Representative Stevens. Stevens votes aye. Representative Thompson. Thompson votes no. Representative Warner. Warner votes aye. Vice Chairman Wright. Vice Chairman Wright votes aye. Chairman Crawford.
Aye.
Chairman Crawford votes aye.
While the clerk is tallying the vote, I apologize to the committee on messing that up there. So it's my fault. I'll take blame for it. Maybe I can do a little better in the future. But if you have questions about what we just did, we do have a member of the clerk's office in here, our very own Daniel. And if you've got questions, please see him. He can explain it exactly to you. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Chairman, we have 17 ayes and 5 noes.
Bill fails. Huh? Oh. Okay. Huh? I must restate the vote. Bill. Okay. Madam Clerk, will you please announce the vote again?
Mr. Chairman, we have 17 ayes and 5 noes.
The ayes have it. Bill moves on to calendar and rules. We do have a proper motion to adjourn. We are adjourned.